Good morning and welcome to AutoTalk Weekly Wrap, or the AutoTalk Live. We should give this thing a proper name at some point. Episode 93. We are older than my great grandmother got to, so we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Joining me this morning from the closet of a middle-aged biker who really pulls out his Ducati is Amos Bambury. How are you doing there, mate?
Very good, thank you.
Where are you?
I'm at Casbolt's in Christchurch, so motorbike dealership. Yep.
Fantastic.
Nice.
How's it going there? You selling many Ducatis? There's Ducati and Honda, is that right?
Yeah. It's a funny one. Obviously, winter is not a time when there's too many people on bikes, but it's just it's a matter of taking the opportunity when they come in. So there's still turnover, and there's a lot of apparel here. And when you have someone that rides bikes, especially in the rain, they need the good stuff. So. Yeah,
is there also a little bit of a thing, and we may have touched on this page on the show of the whole community aspect of a bike dealer. I mean, people tend to not go hang out at a car dealer, but they do at a bike dealer, and they do that in winter when they can't necessarily get out on the bike as much, and maybe just want a little bit of soak up some of the culture.
It's 100%. Yeah, and you'd see in each shop, like I'm familiar with other shops as well, they have their groups that roll in. Here, there's a really big crew that come in every Wednesday. And we've just got to make sure that we've got sugar and the coffee machine's on and they're happy. Yeah, so yeah. I think anything you want foot traffic, so it's really nice having people in. Yeah.
David, do you have a bike shop you go and hang out at once in a while? You are the two-wheel man of the show?
Well, I'm lucky that in Lower Hutt we have quite a number of motorbike dealers, but yes, there is one in particular that I go to, largely because they service my bikes. But yeah, it is a tough time for motorbike dealers, and I think I said this last week or the week before. For me, one of the litmus tests about how the economy is going is how motorbike sales are going, because motorbike sales tend to be discretionary expenditure these days. And when discretionary expenditure gets tight, we often see motorbike sales fall, and that's an indicator. It's one of the indicators for me or litmus test of how strong the economy is. So yeah, I go and hang out, have a look. But I've noticed, and I don't know, Amos, if you're seeing the same thing, but I've noticed bikes are sitting on the shop floor for a lot longer now than they were this time last year.
Yeah, and especially new. I think good used, super quick, still moves quick. But I'm very interested to cover this with our other guests as well, because I feel that when you are selling a product, you are so at the mercy of your distributor if it's new. And an example is, like I was reading the last AutoTalk, and right at the back it has the bike registrations. I mean, Triumph have brought out some good models, the 400 and then the Scrambler, and they're getting a lot of regos. And you'd think the dealers do a great job, totally, but when the product is right price, right model for the current environment, man, they're doing some regos.
Is some of that deferred order? I mean, stuff that people, that those bikes have been on the way for a while, and finally shipment lands. Deliveries made.
Yeah, I think it's clear when you have a good Lambs bike, new, and you're pricing it maybe sort of under 8,000, and it's a good product, man, it sells.
And I think taking the view or the side of the distributor in New Zealand has almost no say over a lot of the stuff. We're at the end of the world. Nothing's made for the New Zealand market, so they get them when they can get them.
Yeah,
and motorcycle production is a little bit different from vehicle manufacturing. Vehicle manufacturing is happening all the time, but for motorcycles, the production might be, your annual production might be only occurs for 3 or 4 weeks of a year in a factory, and then they move on to other models. So it's a complicated business from the new end. And what we do see, Richard, is that when new models come, they do sell. Even the bigger models, they do sell. There's a turnover. So if you look at the big bikes, the new bike that's arrived is the BMW GS 1300, which is placed at 1250, and they are selling because people have said, "Oh well, I've had the GS 1250 for a while, the new models, and I'll replace it. So that's when we do see sales. But having said that, it's you're right. It's the cheaper end of the new market that seems to be doing better.
Are people switching to scooters a little bit more while their other bills are getting tight? I mean, you'd go buy a scooter or a small used bike and save some money on gas. I mean, or is the winter just a bit harsh for that to be an economic reality?
Might depend a little on where you are in the country, but yeah, that definitely is a good item that turns over. Is your cheaper new bikes? They do turn over a bit, and the rego stats support that side. But yeah, like David said too, the big bikes still have a following and a need and a want, and there are people that are constantly in that market that move around the economy, and they want that toy. So yeah, it's just a lesser number than the smaller bikes.
Yeah.
Now last question, Amos, on the bike side. It's a little bit of industry secret here. It may or may not be the case. I had a friend several years back when Lamb's bikes arrived and Ducati launched a Lamb's bike. And they said the difference between the Lamb's bike and the mainstream model was a little piece of extra casting on the throttle bracket that stopped the throttle going any further. And that you could grind that off and instantly you had a non-Lamb's bike. Is there any truth to that?
There's a little bit there. Yeah, there's like, yeah. I don't know how much I'm allowed to go into, but yeah.
It's like the old...
like a regulator on it that fits it within the category of Lambs. Yeah.
It's like in the old days with the two strokes being limited to 2 kilowatt hours, whatever in New Zealand, is that you basically could go and take the exhaust off a lot of 2-stroke 50s. There'd be a little washer tack welded in the exhaust, grind that off, get yourself another half a kilowatt or so.
Yeah, look, I do know a little bit about this. I recall having fairly careful discussion with ministers in several previous lives ago when I was working in the Ministry of Transport when we brought the Lambs in. And the policy intent was that at the time of first registration, it had to meet the requirements. There's no control capability after that. And it's not just the Ducatis that are built that way. Quite a number of different makes and models had a limiter on the throttle as a way of making that power to weight ratio around that 600, 650, 660 cc range. And they were easy to circumvent at the end of the day. But overall, it hasn't affected the policy outcomes. There's a few people that will always play with it. But, it's the policy achieved what it wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I guess the beauty of the Lamb's bike too is it's not necessarily just about the learners too. A lot of people, they don't need 1 million horsepower. They just want to get out on the road and look like they're getting on the road.
Totally. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Excellent. Better than back in the day when I learned when it had to be something tiny. Like I learned, I think my initial lessons were on like a little 125cc Suzuki because you couldn't really learn on much more, I think, at that point.
The major policy intent of the Lambs was to move away from that 250cc limit and allow people to get up to 660cc in a certain power to weight ratio, so that there was longer term use of the bike rather than them selling the 250 as soon as the 6 months was up and going to a really big bike. So that was, and the other thing that happened at the time was we removed the lower speed limit, because when you're on the open road, a lower speed limit for a learner bike is less safe than going at the same speed as other vehicles on the road. So those two things saw a reduction in the rate of serious injuries in motorcycling.
And even just the extra horsepower. I mean, I remember riding over the Harbour Bridge on a VN 250 when I was learning to ride, and I was a big lad. I was probably slightly bigger than I am now back then. And interesting adventure trying to get over the motorway on the Harbour Bridge on a VN 250 with a guy my size. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So Anyway, right. So we do have a special guest coming in shortly. He's finishing off a staff meeting, and then he's got a few other things to do, and he's going to jump in. And that is Neeraj Lala, the Chief Executive Officer of Toyota New Zealand. But first, we have another regular person missing, and he has sent a message from somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I'll let him tell you.
Greetings, Auto Talk viewers. I'm sorry I can't come to the show again for you this week, but I am speaking to you from it's a pretty special place if you're interested in road history or road trip history. This is Seligman, Arizona, and it's on Route 66, and it has two very, very important reasons why I'm here. Number one, actually three, it's got fantastic shakes still from the Snowcat behind me, which is one of the original Route 66 businesses, originally owned by a gentleman named Juan Delgadillo, who is now sadly passed on, but the business is still run by people who know what they're doing and make very, very good cherry shakes. Second reason is Seligman was the birthplace of the Route 66 preservation movement. The road was bypassed in 1978. This little town here was left in ruins until a local barber by the name of Angel Delgadillo said, I've had enough of that. And he was the pioneer of the Route 66 preservation and recovery, global mission to bring prominence back to the mother road. And it's through his efforts initially that there's been so much interest in Route 66 since. As you can see, it's a very small little town. The third reason Seligman is so popular and so important is this was where John Lasseter came with his film crew, scouting out locations for in 1991, for the movie Cars. We all know that, right? If we've got children, we know the movie Cars really well. And Seligman was effectively the model they used. Sat down and had interviews with Angel for the best part of 2 or 3 hours, talking about how this town was bypassed altogether by the interstate in 1978. 1 minute there was a string of traffic, the next minute it's like the lights just turned out, no one turned up. And this is one of those locations where they use the town of Seligman as the basis for Radiator Springs. Now, a different setting, obviously. Radiator Springs is set back down on the Mojave Desert, but the outline of the town itself, that's Seligman all the way through. So it serves some very, very important functions. I'm going to get run over here in a second. It's actually a really busy place. Tourists from all over the world are coming across to Seligman to see what's going on. If we look behind us here, we can see just back behind me, that's the original barber shop of Angel Delgadillo. He is still alive at the age of 97. He has now retired, but he is still very active in the community. And like I said, he is literally the pioneer of Route 66 preservation. So here we are. This is Route 66 royalty. I'm coming at you from here. I hope things are going well in New Zealand. I hope you've actually got some businesses left. I believe it's been a pretty tough month of June so far for the industry. The new car numbers are not looking great, and I don't believe the used ones are all that fabulous either. I'm sorry to hear that, because over here right now it's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 36 degrees centigrade for all you that speak metric, and it's a beautiful day. Take care, everyone, and I'll spot you on Auto Talk coming very, very soon.
There you go.
Awesome.
Just for the record, I'd watched Cars several times before I had a child, because adults are allowed to watch animated movies as well. Now, sitting at the side of the room, and I'm going to try and add him here because I can see he's here, but I can't see his camera, so maybe he's there. And I'm going to try now is Twin New Zealand CEO Neeraj Lala. Neeraj, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. We can't see you, but that's okay. That's okay. How are things down there at Twitter New Zealand?
Yeah, look, pretty good this morning. We've had a staff celebration, I guess. Which usually cheese scones and sausage rolls for the whole company, and we've just had a full staff meeting. So we've just reviewed the results so far to date. Just a little bit of a celebration about field days, and then flowing on obviously from the Kantar acknowledgement this week. So everyone's rather chipper for a Friday, which is what you want from your team. So it's good. No, it's going good.
Do you have a button on your screen there to start your camera, or you?
Yeah, look, it says that my camera is supposedly working. So let me just check with my tech just for a second, and I'll see if I can't get it fired up.
No worries at all. Oh, face going on and off. It doesn't matter.
I think I know what might be happening. Hang on, give me 2 seconds.
I was tempted to crack some
your
joke,
camera is on. Your
really
camera's covered. I think it's. There you go.
How's that?
Good.
I'm not sure if that's better or worse, David.
I was about to crack a joke, but I thought
I'll forget it's coming. It's coming in a minute.
Now, we've just been talking with Graeme McDonald, who's running down Route 66 at the moment. Did you do Route 66 when you were based up in the US?
I did not. I'm very jealous. I'm very jealous. There's a group of New Zealand customers. I think David Wilson, one of our former CEs from Rotorua, is doing that Route 66 drive, and I'm very jealous following that social media feed.
You might have to head over there at some point and get a Tundra and take it for a run down there. Now, I'm not sure if I know you met David Crawford before. Have you met Amos Banbury before? He's one of our other panelists from Better, one of the great finance broker networks around the country.
I'm loving Amos's background.
Yes,
nice.
As I'm sure David Crawford is. David's probably eyeing up the latest gear that he needs to be purchasing.
I bought some recently. I'm not allowed to buy anymore.
That's Amos's motorcycle dealership in Christchurch, Casbolts. So if you want a Ducati or a Honda, then Amos will sort you out. Do you ride?
I do have my motorcycle license. I had a Ninja 636 before I went to the States, which I loved. But of course, I brought four wheels back, and then I've acquired a couple more four wheels. So if I brought a motorbike, I'd probably be in as much trouble as David buying more motorcycle accessories and gear, like divorce, probably.
Yeah,
now I'm aware we're
changing my motorbike.
Now, I'm aware we probably don't have you for the entire time we're on today. So we've got a big lump of news here to do, but I'm going to flick through and go straight to the Twitter stuff because there is a reasonable amount of Twitter news here floating around over the last 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since we've been online. And the first one, which I suspect probably came up at your meeting this morning, was that Twitter claimed the top spot in the key reputation index. New Zealand has overtaken Air New Zealand at the top of a key brand reputation index, the first time the brand other than the National Airlines held the top spot. Twitter's win also took away Air New Zealand's chance to celebrate 10 years at the top of the Kantar Corporate Reputation Index. That's the 10th year of the index as well. It uses Kantar's RepZ framework to assess standardized reputation attributes of a business across trust, leadership, fairness, and responsibility. I could say what you've said here, but tell us, you must be pretty pleased to knock Air New Zealand off that top spot.
Yeah, look, I think it's important to the focus hasn't been to knock anyone off. It's been really around our own work and the work that we needed to have done. If you look at the responsibility, how you treat your people, it's been a really key focus of ours, obviously, over the last 4 years, as we've had just one turbulent time after another. What does really treating your people well look like? And it's not just here in Palmy, it's also, our team, quite a big team now at Thames. And so that's been a really big focus of ours to go, what does that mean? What's really hard on that responsibility pillar is that, Bunnings, even Air New Zealand do an exceptional job in that area around using their staff and communicating their messages, and we've done it in the past with Signature Class and our Thames team. We tend not to do it on our broader Toyota business or Lexus, and it's something we just need to look at because, like, our Hey Toyota platform is a really good platform for understanding what customers are asking. There's an opportunity there to use some of our staff to deliver that message, so we'll consider that. But trust and I guess leadership has been two big areas of ours. We've been, I think, fairly vocal over the last 4 years. We've had a transition at the MIA with David to Amy. We've had a lot of work that we've been doing, policy work with the MIA to government. And Toyota's had quite a firm position from day one that we haven't sort of wavered on. We had a view that hybrids were the key technology in that transition, and we believe that. And we got in a place where I guess we had people on the fences believing that our acceleration pathway should have been faster. The challenge with that is you just can't bring in some of that technology at the right price. And so we said that it's not that we're haters, it was we're supporters, but supporting in terms of the right timing and what that transition looks like. So I certainly think in the last 12 months that's had, it's been more widely recognised that, there is a pathway, not a single solution. And it's something, David and I have talked about it many times as well. We can't rush things. It's got to be introduced at the right time. And we're just seeing some of the unintended consequence, I guess, of manipulated demand, and it's going to take a little bit of time to recover, and that's not easy in a softening market.
I think you're right there too, Neeraj. I think that one of the issues is there's been a lot of regulatory uncertainty, and I think Richard, in your monthly magazine, Simeon Brown said they're working on regulatory certainty. And there's nothing more industry likes better than is regulatory certainty. Uncertainty brings all sorts of issues. And touching on the path for reduction of CO2, because hybrid technology is a proven technology and been around for a long time, and it's a distinction between hybrid versus plug-in hybrid or full battery. And the cost of it is a lot more affordable. But, you know, you get this 25 to 30% reduction in fuel use with a decent hybrid vehicle. And if you move the transition for CO2 reduction is more quick. It's the unreasonableness of the targets after that become an issue. And I think Toyota, hats off to Toyota. They've done a really good job in communicating, what the hybrid technology does and moving the platform there. So, putting the money where their mouth is.
Mm-hmm. Do you think at the moment, this whole trust thing, with trust reputation, and we discussed this at Field Days, which we can touch on a bit later as well. We've got this market which is, for a lot of people, just incredibly bad. But you guys have still got waiting lists and stuff's turning over. You say in a recent AutoTalk article that dealers are still profitable, everything's running well. How much do you think that your trust and reputation has to do with that? I mean, is it a bit of a safe port in a storm, do you think, for a lot of consumers?
Yeah, I do believe that. My background's marketing. My research thesis for my MBA was around engagement trumps loyalty. And yes, I've done a bit of research, have some data. If you can be honest and engage with your customers, we had a lot of media reports on what the silver bullet should look like, and we've maintained all along that there is no silver bullet. The multi-pathway or powertrain approach was the best way to decarbonise, and it's the most affordable way to decarbonise. We're seeing. We're seeing hybrids flow in as used imports at the moment. It's because they are a really good, strong. We just look at our CO2 numbers for our used car division today. We're down, more than 25% in terms of our CO2 for the used cars that we're wholesaling. It's on the back of hybrids. So I definitely think that the technology is the right technology for the transition. That's not to say that EVs won't play a role. We just don't think they're going to play as significant a role in the time frame that's been stated. And I'm really confident. I think the new minister's looking at all of those areas quite pragmatically, and I think he's reviewing a lot of the really good data that David initially set up, and Amy's sort of continued with the MIA. And I thought it was a little bit rough. Tesla coming out and commenting on the review process. When you look at the MIA is represented by all brands bar two, and so the recommendation and the data presented by the MIA to the minister reflects, I'm going to say, the whole industry. So I think the process is good. The minister's listening. But as you say, the market is softening. Without a doubt, the market's softening. Our Alexa sales are still up 15% on last year, which is mega. Our Toyota sales are down just under 1%. We're heading into as you've just heard, a little bit of a softer month this year, but we're still confident without being arrogant that the headwinds aren't going to hurt. So we're just preparing ourselves.
For those viewers, listeners who don't know what Neeraj was talking about there, if you remember, recall, I think 2 episodes ago, we discussed the minister post-budget had entered legislation to Parliament, basically shifting forward the line where he could control or update the clean car standard, or now they call it the clean vehicle standard, through essentially cabinet, rather than going back to
regulations.
Yeah, regulations, yes, rather than going back through item. Now, the Herald finally picked up on the story 2 weeks after AutoTalk did, but they turned it around to basically put it out as Tesla complained that they weren't consulted. Now, I've commented on this a few times publicly. We've got a story that's coming out really shortly, saying that's pretty normal in these early stages. There'll be further work done on this. but in the early stages, it's pretty normal for the minister to consult with industry groups as a fast way to get these things put together. And I've got a statement here from Amy Wiley that she's just sent me in regards to that news going out there. From an MIA perspective, collaboration and engagement with officials, the Minister and other industrial associations on the CCS review has been the best experience to date. Well, whilst we eagerly await announcement of the CCS review outcomes, I take this opportunity to warmly invite the couple of new importer/distributors not currently participating at an industry level to seriously consider working more closely with the MIA in the future. As the voice of the new vehicle industry, we represent the interests of all our members and facilitate wider industry collaboration on key issues, concerns, and needs of the entire New Zealand industry and NZ. And I guess my take on that is Tesla is basically there complaining to media that they've not been engaged in this process. But the flip side to that is Tesla has basically refused to engage in the way that things have been done before. They want to cut their own path. David, you must have a take on this one.
I'm going to say a few things here. I'll start with the Herald article first. Well, what a real botch up of a story. Sorry, Thomas, but you really butchered that one. You actually got the Clean Car Standard and Clean Car Discount as separate policy initiatives confused, muddied the waters.
Yep.
And secondly, it came across as a fanboy for Tesla. I've had a history with Tesla and trying to get them to be a member of the association when I was on the hot seat. And they're awkward. Let's be frank, the Tesla, right from the very top, right from Musk himself, have always taken the view that there's their way or the highway, and they are there for themselves. And good on Tesla for making the progress that they've made with EVs in design and technology. But I've had a view, and I couldn't actually say this too much when I was in the hot seat at MIA.
But you're unleashed now.
But I'm unleashed. I have never thought EVs were going to be the single answer. In fact, to go down the EV route, singularly, it was going to create more of a climate change issue than to solve it until we got our electricity grid networks worldwide working in a CO2-free environment. Because they're not working in a CO2-free environment, and because of the manufacturing processes around batteries in addition to cars, there is a net loss for most countries in going down the EV track. So, governments have to think really hard here about how to do things. And Neeraj is absolutely right. It's going to be a mixed technological solution for our climate change needs. But coming back to Tesla's comments, look, if they wanted to be engaged, there is an association there that would be more than happy to have them on board and to take their views on board. I mean, they're likely to have slightly different views to some of the members. But, that's how trade associations work.
Yeah.
And
I think
it is
they've been a little bit hurt by the FCI experience in Australia, but they're different organisations. It's a different experience.
Completely. But putting my hat on, going back almost 2 decades ago when I started at the Ministry of Transport, part of the public policy process is that at an early stage, you want to get representative views ahead of wider consultation to form a public policy framework that you can then go and consult on. Because if you don't get that early input, you're going to miss the barge by a long way.
Yeah. Can I just maybe touch, Richard, your question around trust? If we bring the conversation just quickly back to trust. I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here because I think it's really important, and we touched on it just very briefly at Field Days, and that is around fixing things when things go wrong. I think this is a really important piece of the trust pillar. It's the same in motorcycles, it's the same in cars, it's the same in heavy. When things go wrong, and typically the complexity of the manufacture of a car, a truck, a motorcycle is so complex. It's been the catalyst for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year warranty. So we're seeing a lot of new entrants in the market with a 7-year unlimited warranty because the process and the reassurance that customers need around quality is needed through factory warranty. And so we've had our traditional 3-year warranty. We've featured really strongly in quality surveys, international quality surveys for being the best quality. But when things go wrong, it's what's your process? And And this is really important because, we're about to, there's no secret, it's all publicly available. We've got an issue, we had an issue, several years ago with Hilux and the diesel particulate filters. And, 92% of the 27,000 plus have been repaired on a 6% fault rate. And so when you look at the actions that you take, we were like, right, what are we going to do? We put on a huge fleet of Hiluxes because we didn't want a customer coming in with a Hilux and being given a Yaris to do work for 2 days because the repair was substantial. And I guess we would have maybe slightly more than 20% of our service work each month in rectification or recall or warranty, and we consider that the right thing to do. So it's going to be really interesting. If I look at Air New Zealand and some of the challenges they've had, I honestly believe they've responded to a lot of those challenges exceptionally well. And if you even think of food stuff, Chris Quinn, who I admire as a leader, through a cost of living crisis, the challenge that all supermarkets come under around price competitiveness and what foodstuffs have been able to do is they've scored really highly. I think they're the highest scorer in fairness, for an area that's under real pressure at the moment. So I think it's how you respond to some of those things is really important. And when things go bad, I think going back to the original point you were possibly making was people gravitate towards a brand that they can trust. It's kind of a human nature thing. It's what each of us would do. It's what I certainly do. You might pay a little bit more. And so we feature highly on fairness, through our agency model, but we're not the cheapest. And that's kind of what the brand trust and relationships been built on for a long time. So I think a combination of things will help support. Also, in a crisis, the strength of your brand supports you through it. Like we've had a lot of customers support us through this initial phase. And, the fact that we've got, a dozen odd customers that aren't happy, that's always going to happen. So it's how do you fix that?
Yeah. Amos, how important is trust and reputation when it comes to finance? I mean, particularly with the triple CFA, hopefully it goes soon. You have to go and sit down and dig into people's stuff. I mean, they kind of got to trust you, don't they?
Yeah, it's identical wording that's just been used. It is totally. And I think it's why, the easiest customer to deal with, in my opinion, is the second time round because you're already past that trust moment. And all those, questions in their mind are gone, and then they know that you provide great service and they can trust you second time around easy. Third, fourth, fifth, obviously, is what you want as well, because then your cost of acquisition is so different as well, even from the commercial side. So, it's identical. Yep.
Yeah. Your dealers, at Field Day discussion, you talked about your dealers and they're doing well. And Amos, I'm going to throw this to you because you're a dealer. How important is distributor support at the moment for dealers? I mean, how key is that?
Yeah, huge. I touched on this before you popped into the meeting. So,
good to see you up there.
Good. Yeah. That's awesome. I think it's so valuable, and I think what I would like to see, probably from what I know of who I talk to, the more a distributor can spend time at the front end, I think is so valuable, and see what a dealer goes through and see what happens in the service center. And genuinely, you could view it as though you've got someone with quite a heavy title and a heavy role at a distributor and think, is it going to be valuable sitting at a service desk at a dealership? I can honestly say it would present so much value. And it's like seeing what a dealer goes through and helping that dealer through that process would just be priceless. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what it's like at the Toyota side, but I think the more contact there is with the dealer and the more front-end understanding and hearing different things is just valuable, because the more the dealer sells, the more the distributor wins, hands down. So,
do you have a program of management going and sitting on the dealer floor in Nearage?
Yes and no, because it's interesting because we've got a slightly different dynamic. Matthew Downing I'd use as a really good example. He was one of our heads of sales here at Toyota. He's now the chief executive at Cook Allison Toyota in Dunedin. We have a really strong program of support. So in our press release, I'd sort of acknowledge the work of our reduced number of store owners. we try not to call them dealers, but in the context of this conversation, our dealer owners, 20 years ago, we made a commitment to reduce the number of our dealer owner groups and expand their footprint to try and help build resilience. And we have a really good program, I think, and I mentioned in my press release that I think the relationship with all of our store CEOs at the moment, and not just the store CEOs, but the store major shareholders, is really tight. So last year we had a 2-day, quite detailed store planning conference, and we actually got the owners and the CEOs all in the room together to share the vision and where we're heading. But following that, we have, like all distributors, we have awards. We call them the Business Excellence Awards. And what we've got is the Champions of Parts, the Champions of Service, New, Used, Leadership and People, Customers, and Ultimate Supreme Award winner. The Supreme Award winner generally is the chair of that group, and the person that knows everything and the best person in the country around service is the lead on the service committee. And we call it an advisory panel, and they advise TNZ on what's working, what's not working. So when we come up with the performance metrics for next year, that's quite a collaborative, they might say that it's not collaborative enough, but it's not a kinder surprise on the 1st of Jan on what they're going to be measured on for the following year. So look, I'm really proud of the work that we do with our stores. I think, our lines are always open, and you get calls on stuff that you're doing good and stuff that you're not doing good. So I think the communication lines are pretty good at the moment. Well, they have been for a long time.
Is there a line you need to keep? I mean, it's, I guess, the case of you don't need to want to purport to know how to run their business, and they don't want to purport to be trying to run yours. Yeah,
exactly. Like the last few years, as David mentioned, it's been really hard. We've decided to take a position of a more active social policy, not advisor, but maybe it is an advisor. We've tried to provide that information as objectively as we possibly can without seen as you're pushing the barrel of hybrids. So we tried to take quite a balanced view. And it's really hard getting our store CEOs up to speed. And they themselves have said, look, we're fully confident that the engine room at TNZ are taking care of that stuff. And you need to trust that we're looking after things on our side, which we do. And then our metrics, I mentioned that at field days that we invest a huge amount in product training, particularly, e-learning. And, when you don't get the take up that you need from the stores, we're able to at least discuss and present that with them and say, hey, there's one of the reasons that we're getting a bit of a low score here from customers on product learning is we're not having good take up in this particular area. So, and that, they don't see that as a criticism, they just see that as an opportunity, or whether it be velocity to delivery, from stores, from cars delivered to stores. When you've got back orders, you want them going through as efficiently as possible. So we measure all those things and then we share the data. We don't, I'm going to go on record and say that I think we're moving away from a stick and carrot approach to more of a collaborative model, which seems to be working well, I think. Not to say we don't have KPIs, and it's not to say that we don't, swing the sledgehammer when it needs to be, but haven't needed to for a while.
Now, for those who wondering what we're talking about, we covered actually an interview with Neeraj and Andrew Davis at Field Days. So jump on the autotalk.co.nz. That story there, quite extensive, goes through some really interesting things. How did you find Field Days this year? Because I was there on the ground and I spoke to a number of people around the place. And I know you guys, I think, had a reasonable day, but I feel like certainly some other brands and the general vibe was a bit muted.
Yeah, look, anything I say from this point forward is going to seem like I'm showing off, and maybe I am a little bit, but I am going to start with, we entered into Field Days with 19 consecutive years of trust with the Reader's Digest Award. So we went in really confident and our sales are going well. And there's, when things are going good, there's just a natural positive vibe. And that flowed into our Field Days site. I thought my accessories team might have gone a little bit overboard with the kit out on the cars. I thought the display cars might have been a little bit different to what I was thinking, but, all of them sold. I thought what they'd done on the Land Cruiser 300 was a bit over the top. Same with the 70 series. All of them sold. All of them. And there would have been probably 15 grand's worth of accessories, maybe plus on the 70 series double cab anyway. 10th on cars. I just thought this is just over the top. It was just such a good vibe. We had just under 10,000 customers register on our site. So if you think of the numbers, you've got 106,000 passing through Mystery Creek. Just under 10,000 registered to receive information on our site. There would have been a huge volume of people that didn't register their details. So,
was there a prize draw tied to that?
No, just if you want to receive more information. Like we've moved away. We have moved away from come and get a free drill or a whatever. It was, we had people just sitting around drinking coffee, for a while. I mean, you were there. It just had a really good vibe. Our brand ambassadors, we had 5 key brand ambassadors there. I hope I get them all right. I had Gal Adams, Mark Ellis, Willie Appiata, Cameron Leslie, and Graeme. I've got one really important one that I'm missing. It'll come to me in a minute. But each of the brand ambassadors were just exceptional. Matt Watson, with just connecting with customers. They were there 3-4 days just talking to people. So music was on, had a good vibe. Hey, look, I'd say it was probably one of our best field days in a while. We sold a lot of cars, we sold a lot of accessories, and customers were pretty happy.
Matt's up north, so he probably didn't have power to see you miss him there, so you're okay.
Yeah. Well, he was the one that was on our video promoting sort of what we were doing and stuff. But people want to come in and meet people, and that's what field days for us is about. I mean, I think, I can't remember if it was you or one of the other journalists asked me why we didn't have our BZ4X on display. And
that was me.
And I think when you're at a site like that and you want it to be quite intimate and space is limited, we had a hydrogen generator there that created a huge amount of interest. Hydrogen technology for that type of commercial purpose is brilliant. You could stand right next to it, have a conversation, and it's running full power, and there's no noise. Steam is waste, unlike the rest of the sites that were running diesel all day for 5 days. So those sorts of things to us matter, and they were really good conversation pieces for customers to feel as though they're hopefully with a brand that's a bit more, looking at the horizon rather than carnage there might be next week.
Are you running any field day specials down there, Amos, on some of the Honda products, or does it spread down that far?
No, a lot of what they did in that moment was farm related. So side-by-sides, four-wheel drives and those sort of things. And especially here, we are a road dealership. So we don't actually have those items. So I know there was an interest sort of deal on a lot of the product, but a lot of that was the farm-related stuff, which they would have had at their site up there. Yeah.
I think this year we were down to only about 7 or 8 vehicle brands at field days. I mean, is it an ongoing industry discussion as to whether it's worth going? I mean, I know I think Twitter may have skipped the odd year in the past, but also know in some years it's certainly been Twitter weren't there, and then suddenly last minute they were going to be there, and that kind of thing. Is field days pretty solid, you think, as an automotive event, or is it kind of an up and down thing? I don't know. Has it ever been discussed in the MIA basis, even whether we need that kind of show aspect?
Look, after COVID, when you looked at the cost savings and the fact that our sales still maintained through that period quite high, we'd made the decision that given that we'd had such bad stock shortage, it just seemed crazy to turn up to field days. It'd be like being in the tool shed, marquee at field days and then not having any stock to sell. It would have been a bit strange, So we made the decision not to be there just on the back of those 2 key reasons. But I have to admit, I was, if I'm being honest, I was a little bit 50-50 on whether we should have been there this year. And the marketing team and our customer team here and the sales teams kind of convinced me that actually connecting with customers is really important, is a really important piece of this whole process. And having spent that first day there, I think they're right. It would be hard for us not to be there next year. Some would have to be quite catastrophic because the connection with customers, just sharing those stories have been really important.
Hey, Moss, you need to stand on at field days doing finance for some of this equipment out there.
Totally. Yeah. I agree with that comment. I just think the customers want to see the brand, and it's a good environment and a relaxed environment where you can see different things, vehicle launches, like that sort of thing. I think it's cool.
The discussion around field days and automotive has been ongoing for quite some time. And during my time at the MIA, I think early on when I started, I asked the question about automotive shows, and the answer was that New Zealand's not a big enough market for an automotive show, and there's a cost associated with that, and the distributors' parent offices would have a view about the minimum spend for the certain standard and image and presentation, and New Zealand wasn't a big enough market. Cue field days. So field days then becomes an opportunity for a pseudo automotive display. When I say pseudo, a pseudo car display like they have in the big shows overseas. And I think it plays a really important role. And I don't know how you feel about this, Neeraj, but I mean, I get it. Post-COVID supply shortages, you wouldn't want to be promoting sales when you've got long list waits. And I think you guys had list waits along with a couple of other manufacturers exceeding 12 months. And that's just too long. But when you get into a downturn, that's when you need to be present. And that's what we're facing at the moment. The sales are tough for most distributors and brands. And that's when you need to show up and say, hey, look, we're here and look at our product. And get into the face of prospective buyers. And field days is a really good opportunity for that.
Yeah, and I think just extending on that, I think the key thing is there's danger in coming in and out. You know, I'm here because I need you. And when I don't need you, I don't need to be there. You know, and so I'm torn with that. I'm kind of going either you're in or you're not. You know, certainly from this year, I think we can't not be in. Because quite interesting, you know, I mean, and this is one of the challenges that every car company and even maybe motorcycle shop gets when you've got stock shortages is you need someone to blame, you know. So, you know, the blame culture in New Zealand is really good. You know, it's alive and kicking, you know. And so when something goes wrong, it's that person's fault. And so the cool thing with field days is even when you've got 5, 6, 7 months delay, I after you left Richards, you know, spent most of the day on the floor talking to people and just explaining just what the delays were caused by. And when you're open and transparent, people get it. I mean, yes, there'll be customers that can't wait for. There's a need that needs to be satisfied that we can't. But most people. She's like a customer that said that was joking with me about how they had an old Lux, a tall Lux, you know, because they'd lifted it or something. And I joked with them and said, I think you need a new Lux. I think you need a new Lux. And he goes, yeah, I think you're right. And we, you know, those sorts of magical, and you know, and it's you know, and what I love about it is it's almost a little bit undercover boss. You know, you kind of walk around, talk to people. And when they find out what, you know, because I never answer, you know, on the CEO, I'll always go, yeah, you know, we work at Toyota because people are more interested in talking about the product, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool.
If there was some feedback I would give is that I know you guys have got some old, you know, some classics sitting out in the shed back somewhere. Bring them out, because not to want to talk too much about the brand. If you take Mitsubishi, that were a couple of doors down from you. They had an old restored L200 on their stand. They had that V3000 cop car, and they were, I think, show highlights for some people. They're pretty cool. Yeah. And I know you guys have got some similar stuff sitting around out the back of the center, or you could borrow some, bring out some classics. People love that.
No, because at field days, you're not visiting a museum. You're visiting about what's coming. You know, and you're right. You know, we could have put, you know, and I think I might have said to you, we could have put GR Supra, GR Corolla, GR Yaris in the front, and it would have been really cool. Everyone would have been like, blah blah, take photos. But you've got to be really clear on what the purpose of field days is. You know, sitting at field days and talking about how things were 25 years ago doesn't sit well with me. You're right. There's always a time and a place to roll out the classics, and I, more than anyone, am a big fan of classics. But yeah, field days, it's not where you do it. It's about showing your future capability, and that's kind of where we sort of focus. Yeah.
I think if you look at your overall strategy, the stand, and how you did your marketing, you did well, because I think there's a lot of talk, if I take from the media side and the marketing side beforehand, that, you know, the star of the show was going to be the BYD Shark 6. That was going to be one of the big reveals of the show. And if you look at if you look at, well, yeah, fair enough. If you look at column centimeters afterwards and social media afterwards, you guys probably matched, if not exceeded them. Just you did it very well.
Yeah, look, it's you know, as you know, I went over to support Warren with the launch of the Shark. You know, because I think it's really important for us as motor companies to actually be human as well when there's big things to reveal and share. So, yeah, hey, look, everyone has their strategies. You know, for us, launching Prado, it was really important to us to communicate with customers that there's a huge amount of interest in that product, but a very small volume that we are going to bring in. And it was really important for us to share that, because on one side you'd say, just bring in the cars and just deliver them. What's wrong with you? But the problem is our CO2 impact would be catastrophic. So when you're looking at a 46% reduction in CO2 over the next 7 years, having 2,000 cars sold in a single year from a credits and debits on the clean vehicle standard policy just doesn't make sense. So it's a balancing act, and it's a real tough balancing act, because you're balancing supply, demand, and that's the really good work David did when he was at MIA, and it's what Amy's continuing to do now. So we've just got to make sure we get that balance right to make sure we're not killing the market.
Are there any models or volume that you're deliberately holding back just in case the minister gets the changes across sooner than you think?
No. We're not holding back anything, because we don't have the luxury to. So it's really hard. There's huge demand for Land Cruiser 300. And there's always been demand for Land Cruiser 300. Prado's the same, but the majority of our back orders are all hybrid RAV. Hybrid RAV is, you can see why it's been 3 of the last 4 years New Zealand's sort of car of choice, but it's just so practical and so easy. So that's going to go 100% hybrid already. We've got back orders everywhere. CHR hybrid, Corolla Cross hybrid. So yeah, it's not easy, but it's a better problem to have than cars sitting on concrete, I guess, or motorcycles.
Now we can't let it all be wonderfully positive today. You have had a few issues in recent months in regards to some regulatory issues out of Japan. The recent one popped up in the last week and a half. The Toyota Yaris Cross, you had some issues with that. There has been some stuff previously. Thankfully, the Yaris Cross deliveries are back on again.
Yep.
Have these issues around regulatory testing issues that can thing up in Japan had any material impact on you guys? I mean, has it hurt having to announce some of these things sometimes?
Look, I'm going to say, whenever the first one was Daihatsu, the second one was Yaris Cross. What I am going to say is regulations and paperwork and processes in Japan is considered the most paramount when it comes to standards and behaviour, and even it's embedded deeply into their culture. When you look at the detail behind the Yaris Cross production stock, it's on size of boxes. The tests for New Zealand and Australia were done with actually a heavier weight than the rear crash test. So they didn't technically impact New Zealand and Australian product, but from a Japan paperwork and process perspective, it did. And the reason it made, I think, global headlines is, were there shortcuts through my lens? I don't believe there were, but was there a failure in a process? Yes, there were. So does that hurt? Certainly those two incidences didn't hurt us. Will the class action for Hilux, in the coming months hurt us? I hope when the story and the narrative and the communication is shared, I don't believe it will, but you never know. You don't know. We certainly haven't seen cancellations for Yaris Cross at a rate that you would sort of start to panic.
From a marketing perspective, Richard, the sort of announcements that are made and how a distributor in a country responds is really important about what happens next. And I think, hat off to you, Neeraj, stopping it, checking it, communicating, and then saying what you did and coming out and said, okay, we know 100% it's not affecting our models. It was said in a way that was, New Zealand is good, but we're not necessarily proud of the mistake that's been made elsewhere, but we'll own that. Yes. And I think in terms of the Hilux and the way in which you're planning to communicate that, I know from personal experience with people here and in Australia who own Hiluxes, there's a lot of criticism about that. But, what they don't have is the information and the failure rate. And that thing, 6% failure rate across is a really important thing. It says, look, yes, there is some failure, but this is what we've done to fix it. Goes to that reputation risk and reputation score. And that's an important lesson, I think, for a lot of distributors about front-footing it. And I think, I think back to the VW scandal when it initially broke. And, that impacted New Zealand. But the way in which the distributor here, European Motors distributors, dealt with that was they owned up to it. And I think they got quite a bit of kudos out of that. And I think that's an important lesson for distributors, and having the dealer network sort of support that process all the way through, because people have questions.
Yeah, it's a really tough one, because usually a failure, of any sort of technical nature, you've heard it here. I will never allow cars to be released to customers with a known problem. The conundrum we have, whether it be cars or motorcycles, you can hand on heart not say the car or motorcycle that you're delivering is not going to be 100% free of a potential fault. Potential. That's why we've got warranties. That's why we've got these programs in place. The process to manufacture a car or a motorcycle is so complex. There is the possibility something you never deliver it with the knowledge that it could. The thing I will say though is the real challenge in the communication is in the supply of the part that has failed. So if you've got a recall of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20,000, 25,000 units, the manufacturer or the supplier of that particular part, which isn't designed to fail for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, isn't going to have 20,000 of them sitting on a shelf. So the real balancing act is, when can we get part supply? When can the stores have the capacity to complete the repair? And what does that capacity management look like? So honestly, it is so complex. It's such a balancing act. So it's just something we're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off. And I'm actually quite excited about ripping the Band-Aid off and sharing that publicly, because I think how we do it is actually really, really good. And I'd love to put it on the front page of the Herald or stuff for AutoFile, or, you first, Richard, of course.
You're not talking about AutoFile, yeah? For those who aren't aware, there's obviously a class action that was Echo's one that was in Australia, and an Australian law company brought it over to New Zealand, but I'm not quite sure they've quite understood the different approach that New Zealand took to it, or the differences in the New Zealand legal market as well. But I'm sure they'll give it a crack. So yes, it's So it's obviously been a busy week for Toyota news. And we've got a few other news items we can run through. Have you got much longer, Neeraj, or do you need to?
I've got to run. Thanks. Lovely to see you again, David. Amos, lovely to meet you. Hopefully we catch up at some point.
I'm sure there's a standing invite to the dealership in Christchurch to try on a nice Ducati jacket and go for a ride, Neeraj.
I'm ready.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks, Richard. Thanks for the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Catch you.
Bye.
Cheers, Neeraj.
Bye. See you, David.
See ya.
There you go, guys. How was that? Good to have another guest along. Right, let's really quickly, and I'm talking to you here, David. Let's keep any comments minimal. Run through the rest of the news for the day.
I've got to go soon.
Yeah, we'll try and be out of here in the next few minutes. So if we go back to the start, the latest edition of AutoTalk is out now. Yes, we have the Prime Minister looking slightly perplexed on the cover. We had to go through a lot of images to find one where he was actually facing in the right direction, but that was from field days on the BYD stand. A lot of great news in there. We have a really deep look at the CCS with consultant Phil Haynes. We talk with the Motor JQ, have a discussion with Neeraj and Andrew Davis there in regards to how they're going. A really open one, actually, which was quite interesting and pretty great to see. Now, that interview we mentioned with the minister, I spoke to the minister on the stand at field days and discussed a few things such as support for the trade and where they're going with regulatory stability and the costs of the clean vehicle standard, because it's coming on dealers. You can go check that out there, or check it out on LinkedIn as well, on my personal LinkedIn page and on the AutoTalk LinkedIn page. MBR, they named their automotive rich listers. And from the automotive side, we have the Todd family, who are in who sold Todd Motors Group, of course, many years ago. Now they dig oil and minerals out of the ground. The Fukutaka family, who are behind Drive Electric. The Goff family, who, even though they've kind of exited the industry, have still got a bit of cash sitting around. The Giltrap family, and the Maber family, who were a Nissan dealer but are now the operators of the multinational Power Pharma Group. So yes, a usual list there. Centrix, apparently new vehicle loan inquiries are down by 20%, which I think new vehicle sales are down by a little bit more than that. So it's probably not holding up too badly. Amos, how are inquiries on your side?
Honestly, our inquiry and application numbers are holding steady.
Yeah, you're too good to measure the trends from then. There you go. The private, and there's a few finance company shakearounds going on. Private equity firm acquires Spears Finance. So private equity group Anchorage Capital Partners has acquired the New Zealand-owned Spears Finance Group, including Yugo Fleet. Spears Finance Group Chief Executive Michelle Hurley, says the transaction will support the continued and accelerated growth of the business. Will be business as usual for Spears Finance and Yugo Fleet, with Anchorage Capital Partners confirming the support of our team and business plan. So they were previously owned by Maui Capital and Milford Asset Management. Geneva, they're exiting the NZX. Part of this gives them lower requirements for information disclosure, simplifies their paperwork they have to do, basically. So that is going to a shareholder vote. New Zealand distributor appointed for Mercedes-Benz Trucks and Freightliner. So Daimler Truck brands, Mercedes-Benz Trucks and Freightliner will also have general distributor locally in New Zealand. Keith Andrews Holdings, which currently has the distribution rights for Fuso vehicles and parts for its wholesale organisation Fuso New Zealand, will soon take over the distribution of fellow Daimler Truck brands Mercedes-Benz and Freightliner. They're currently distributed out of Australia by Daimler Truck Australia Pacific, based in Mulgrave, Victoria. So that's a new move there. Armstrong's joins the Women in Automotive Accord. This was launched at AutoTalk Live. So Armstrong's is the first company to join the Women in Automotive New Zealand Accord. That provides a framework to raise female participation in the automotive industry from 17% now to 30% by 2030, and shift the dial for women in leadership roles. Troy Kindi and a few other people from Armstrong's have commented, and we have a full article coming in the next AutoTalk magazine interviewing those people about that change. Ineos. Now, there's another article that's coming next to AutoTalk. I got to speak with the global chief CEO of the Ineos brand, who run the Grenadier. They've kind of hit the point where they've built enough cars to meet the early demand. Now they're actually trying to sell some more, so they're launching a massive brand campaign. So a great chat with their CEO, Lynn Calder. She mentions in there, we discussed the new electric model that's coming, but also that they have a smaller, kind of getting closer to the Suzuki Jimny vehicle next on the list to develop. So that will be interesting. I wouldn't mind one of those for running around town. BYD, of course, revealed the Shark. We've got a really great video on our EVs and Beyond YouTube channel. Twitter claiming the top spot. Dealers, keep going, we've discussed this. New Zealand company Fabrum collaborates with Twitter for liquid hydrogen storage. So New Zealand is working with Twitter internationally to develop hydrogen storage tanks. So New Zealand can be part of this new hydrogen economy that may or may not arrive. Fleet Coach appoints new boss. Christchurch-based safety fleet provider Fleet Coach has appointed technology leader Richard Rayner as its new chief executive. And then the last story on the list is they launched the new MG3 this week. So this is the replacement of their pretty much oldest model and what was New Zealand's cheapest car for quite some time. It's now back in petrol and hybrid form. And they do a fairly extensive full hybrid for about 32 grand. So cars are getting cheap, is the reality. There you go. Hopefully I didn't run through that too fast. But yeah.
Interesting, the truck one, Richard, that's done a full circle because it was with Mitsubishi, because Mitsubishi Fuso had been had that, and then they deliberately, or head office deliberately split the brands, and now they've pulled it back together again. And I think there's a lot of sense in that. I think that's a good move.
Yes, I think also the Keith Andrews Group has built an incredibly professional structure. I mean, you know, the argument with dealer distributor, kind of master distributor level, is it just one big dealer working it out? Well, no, that group really has built a completely kind of separate distributor structure. They've almost circled back around to being a distributor again, and then they've got the dealerships underneath. So a real interesting move there as well. Yeah,
I think it's having the closeness of the New Zealand distributorship to the sales rather than being run out of Australia. We have
Yeah.
a couple of motorbike brands run out of Australia. Ducati is one, of course, and Harley Davidson the other. And that kind of works, different sort of dynamic, but with big trucks and the technical support that you need for the range of products and services around heavy equipment, I think being closer to the market would make some sense.
Yeah. You wish you had the Ducati's office was here rather than Australia, Amos?
Yeah, 100%. It's just like what David said. There's definitely some model separation, that you naturally get between environments. So, yeah, I think, totally. The closer the better, I think. But
I certainly would have wished that in years past too.
Look, thank you guys so much for joining us today. That was quite the episode. Great to have another guest along. I think we're still a few weeks away from having Graeme back. We're also a few weeks away from the AADA. I think you're going, Amos. I'm going. So if anyone else is going, feel free to drop me a line. Richard@automediagroup.co.nz. We're not doing a big drinkies thing this year, but who knows what we could just randomly get together or find ourselves a corner at the actual drinks at the convention. We'll catch everyone next week for another episode of the AutoTalk weekly rap live stream thing that doesn't have a name. Catch you later.
Bye.